Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Down in Manhattan, Kansas, the Avery Johnson era kicking off a little bit earlier than we expected, having a phenomenal performance against Texas Tech. 5 rushing touchdowns, tied Coach Klein's record for most rushing touchdowns in Kansas State history. If you're a Kansas State fan, you have to be so excited about what's to come with this Kansas State offense under Avery Johnson. Want to do 2 things. One, talk about what Avery Johnson brings to this Kansas State offense. And as a fan watching that game, I'm sure many of you guys agree, it's so clear that he brings just another element of juice with his athletic ability and, quite frankly, just a higher ceiling to this Kansas State offense. And then secondly, just dealing with the quarterback room and how to manage that. Kind of want to talk about that as a Michigan fan, kind of have some experience with that, right? J.J. McCarthy, the young 5-star quarterback, comes in. Cade McNamara, the incumbent quarterback that won a Big Ten title for us, that beat Ohio State for the first time in a decade, and how to manage a really good quarterback in Will Howard. That's been there's experience that's given so much success to this Kansas State team, and a young quarterback coming in that does offer a higher ceiling. Excited to get into this one now. Before we do again, just want to say thank you to you guys, and especially the Kansas State fans. We've done a lot of Kansas State game breakdowns. You guys have always shown just a ton of support. I'm a massive fan of the program and Chris Kleiman and what he's doing there. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, for this, would love to hear your guys' thoughts on how to manage this quarterback room, what you would do, what Avery Johnson brings, what you saw from him. Appreciate y'all rocking with us, and let's get into this. Let's first start with what Avery Johnson can do. Now, I want to take it back to what he was coming out of high school. Y'all know me. I'm a little bit of a recruiting nerd. This was a massive win for Kansas State. I mean, fending off a lot of blue chip, blue blood, Power 5 schools that wanted Avery Johnson. You take a look at him coming out of high school. He's not just a one-dimensional guy. Threw for over 2,700 yards, 67% completion percentage, 29 passing touchdowns as a senior in high school. But it's no secret, the real special ability Avery Johnson brings is what he can do as an athlete. You look at the SPARK rating, speed, power, agility, quickness rating. His rating was higher than Lamar Jackson's coming out of high school. A 4.56 40, insane time. A 4.2 20-yard shuttle, a 37-inch vertical. The athletic ability and juice Avery Johnson has in terms of being a ball carrier, it's next level. And he's not just a good athlete. He's a guy that knows how to run the football, reads his blocks, people miss, understands angles. When he has that football in space, he is truly a weapon that can kind of hit that big play, has that game-breaking speed as well. And taking a look at what he did against Texas Tech, where the first time it wasn't just in spot duty, right? They had some packages in there for Avery Johnson. This was the first time that he kind of took the reins of the offense. And he looked great doing it, right? 8 of 9 passing, 77 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns on 90 rushing yards. This is a guy that didn't look like a true freshman out there. And what I want to add is not only is Avery Johnson extremely dangerous with his legs and what he can do with the ball in his hands, but because you have to respect him, defenses are really struggling with that read option. And guys like Trayshawn Ward had a ton of space to operate in. When you're running that read option and you're reading that backside end, and that the ability for Avery Johnson to keep that ball and get outside and use that speed is such a threat, they're not crashing down as much. The linebackers are not playing as much downhill because they have to respect what Avery Johnson can do. So what you saw is the running game in general become a lot more productive because of what Avery Johnson can do with his legs. Trayshawn Ward having a phenomenal day. You saw this rushing attack not only through Avery Johnson and him carrying the ball, but just the rushing attack in general really take off because of what Avery Johnson has the ability to do. At the end of the day, I think it's really easy for a lot of fans to look at that offense and say the ceiling is higher when Avery Johnson is in at quarterback. Now, the second thing I want to do is talk about the transition and what the quarterback room is going to look like. And I'll preface with this. Chris Kleiman and what he's done with this program and the culture that he's implemented, I trust him about as much as any head coach in the country in terms of managing this the right way. Whether it's Avery Johnson taking the reins and becoming that quarterback one or continuing to ease him in, I trust him. But I want to talk about both of those scenarios and what it might look like. And I want to start with very similar feeling that I had with Cade McNamara, where it was the appreciation for what Cade McNamara did for Michigan, winning a Big Ten title, beating Ohio State for the first time in 10 years. You still have that. That doesn't go away. You can support Avery Johnson, but also recognize that Will Howard brought Kansas State so much success. A Big 12 title, has been such a leader in that locker room. In whatever way it goes, what you saw Will Howard do on the sideline, you see a lot of quarterbacks when they got pulled, like maybe not be the number one fan of the backup quarterback, the quarterback that came in, Will Howard. You got to tip your cap to maturity, and I think that speaks a lot to what Chris Kleiman's done with this locker room. But Will Howard consistently in Avery Johnson's ears, giving him encouragement, letting him kind of know he's behind him. You saw in the post-game press conference, Avery Johnson got asked about Will Howard, said, Will Howard shown nothing but love to me, the support that Will Howard shown. That's what you need in a special program. And in Chris Kleiman, you talk about the program success, that type of culture, like really, really impressive. Wanted to note or just give you guys my takes on that, I guess. Now, going into the situation and what it might look like, there's two different ways. One, Avery Johnson continues to get eased into this offense, right? And that's what Michigan did with JJ as a true freshman, because at the end of the day, Avery Johnson, still a true freshman. He's still learning this offense, still kind of getting acclimated to that Power 5 level at Kansas State, but you continue to ease him in. You give him some big moments. I mean, he was not playing in garbage time here. They were down, 17-21 when Avery Johnson was kind of playing significant snaps in that second half. This wasn't just spot duty. This wasn't just garbage time when he took over the offense. These were big moments. You can continue to do that and still let Will Howard play a role in this offense. The second option, and quite frankly, the option that I probably would support the most, and I think from what I've read, a lot of Kansas State fans support the most, is let the Avery Johnson era come. And again, it has nothing to do with the dislike for Will Howard. You love Will Howard. I think Will Howard's been a phenomenal college football quarterback. I was super happy to see him support Avery Johnson. Still going to be the leader in that locker room for Kansas State. But at the end of the day, you talk about the ceiling and Kansas State trying to go out and beat Texas on the road. Who offers you a better chance to play the highest level of offense? It's Avery Johnson and what he can do with the legs that he has and how dynamic he is. The good thing for Kansas State, TCU, Houston, both games at home, those are two games that if you're going to let Avery Johnson kind of take the reins of this offense, those are probably the two conference games that you'd want to see the most at home against two Big 12 teams that you probably should be beating. It'd be a lot of a different story if you had to go on the road to Austin next week and throw out Avery Johnson. You get two games to get his feet wet a little bit more, get him acclimated. However this gets managed, if you're a Kansas State fan, it's a good problem to have, right? You got two really good quarterbacks that you can win. Will Howard won a Big 12 championship last year. Avery Johnson looks like one of the more dynamic quarterbacks that you see across the country right now. There's a lot of teams across the country that want just one starting quarterback that they feel confident about. Chris Kleiman in Kansas State, they got two. I think they're in a really good spot. I trust Chris Kleiman to usher in this era. But, man, as a college football fan, and I'm sure a lot of Kansas State fans, you have to be so excited for what this era is going to look like for Avery Johnson. I can't wait. Appreciate the Kansas State fans for rocking with the fellas. Wanted to hop on, give you guys my takes from what I saw with Avery Johnson, what I knew about him coming out of high school. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.